All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chrome Dev Summit Extended. So if you went to the main Chrome Dev Summit event last week, then you would have seen a lot of really exciting talks about the future of Chrome and web development. So we're hoping to continue in that spirit and show you some more exciting talks on the same topics. So we hope you have a wonderful evening and learn something new. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Your host for today will be Casey, and she's from GDG Oxford, and myself, I'm Markande Pathak from GDG Glasgow.
Okay, in terms of housekeeping, there are two tracks. So this one is track one. So we have 3 sessions, each of which are followed by a short Q&A, about 30 minutes of talking and about 5 minutes of Q&A. There is also track 2. You can see the schedule in the description, so we encourage you to check out both. As far as this one goes, this one has 3 sessions, so we're hoping to bring everyone back at the end for the final session. In terms of Q&A, please feel free to write your questions in the chat throughout the talks. We will pick them out, we will ask the speakers, and they will hopefully have some answers for you. You can find our code of conduct at the link on the slide. Feel free to check it out. It basically boils down to be nice to each other, which I think we can all manage. In terms of social media, you can post or tweet. You can use the hashtags GDG Dev Party and CDS Extended if you like. We also have prizes. So we have a link on the slide. We will also post that in the chat for you, so you don't have to keep it memorized. But you can fill out the form to win one of 4 Google Home Minis.
Okay, so here is the agenda for us. We'll be having 3 talks. The first will be from Fellyph, and he will be talking about the web stories. Then we'll move on to Stanimira, and we'll be discussing about ESLint rules and Angular schematics. And finally, we'll be having Paul Kinlan, who will be talking about the Chrome and the web in 2021 and onwards.
Great. And there are also talks on track 2. So check those out. Those are in the description. If those interest you, you can move back and forth. And these will also be posted to YouTube afterward, so you can watch them later. We are still waiting on our first speaker, and that starts at 6:10. So in the meantime, Markande, is there a talk you're particularly looking forward to?
I think web stories, that's something pretty exciting for me because I have heard about it, never worked on it. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm also very excited for Paul's talk. I really like hearing about developments in Chrome. It's interesting to me as well because I work in security. So it's always interesting to see kind of what is going on from that perspective.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So I can talk a little bit about our first speaker. His name is Fellyph, and he's a front-end developer at Deloitte Digital. So he's also a Google web developer, or a Google developer expert for web. And yeah, his particular passions are search engine optimization and accessibility for web. So yeah, we're really excited to hear from him on web stories. So yeah, we will be back in a few minutes with that. So we'll see you then. All right, we're back. And this is our speaker. So yeah, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. So I was just like checking. I was like, oh my god, I was check my slides. When I saw the time, I was like, oh god, I need to go. So yeah, all good. I'm in Lagos now, in Portugal. I'm not in Dublin at that moment, so kind of like I hope the internet will work fine now. All good for today.
Yeah. So what sort of like projects have you been working on lately, or is there anything that you're really excited about like the future of web and Chrome?
So we have the Chrome Summit last week. I was following the whole presentations and kind of like we have the Chrome Summit is a kind of like the compilation of like what works and what happened during the year, and was really nice to see the change and how the platform adapt for that crazy year, because we have a really like unusual year and we kind of like learn new ways and like to work. And so it was nice to see that, and also the platform like keep moving with the whole craziness, and we have like good launch and we have things that, for example, more understandable, and that we more the items that we're going to see today. We have a talk about web core features that are like a really interesting thing as well. So it's not just like one number, but the translation of when you get a match and you convert like, oh, in a user experience, how you can connect those both things, and you're gonna have that, like being part of the search for the next year. It's also really exciting as well. So, and I think that's a good close for like 2020. Was a hard year, but we are here, and I was just like looking back on time. Last year was at the Dev Fest London, and I was like, oh, that so many things happened in that year. Like 1 year ago, I was in London. Everyone was together at this like huge venue, like with like 800 people, and now we are here, like everyone at home. And I don't know, I don't know. I never expect something like that, like 1 year, but yeah, I hope that we're gonna have like a better 2021, and like like our fields, like social and technology, everything.
It has been a crazy year for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you get started if you like. Just share your slides, and yeah, you can go for it.
So I will just get my slide here.
All right.
So just confirm. Yeah, that's it.
Go ahead. Looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah. So I will just check the comments. If someone have a comment. So if someone have a comment, just like leave at the chat. I will have a look and I will answer that. But okay, for today, today we're gonna talk about web stories. I just select like I just put these like new visual storytelling format, because we're gonna see that it's not something that was like really new. We had something before, and we're gonna see how those two things are connected, and also we're gonna see how we build like a base web stories, and what are the steps like after when you publish that, and the future, what we're gonna have in the future related to the web stories. So, and just thinking here. Next slide. But first, as was commented before, I just want to talk about we already talked about the Chrome Dev Summit, so I had my opinion already about that. But if you want to check, like after the event today we're gonna have like loads of presentations, and so if you want to check the talks from the Chrome Summit, there is a link on the bottom. I will share that presentation after, and you can also see the result for the last Chrome Summit. But now we are in our Chrome Summit extended version. So, and for today, we're gonna talk about web stories, but first we need to get into web stories or stories, just stories. How works that? So first, it's a common structure that we are used to see in different platforms. So I think the first platform we had was like Snapchat, and after we had Instagram. There was like just like mimic the same structure, and after it was like everywhere. So we have WhatsApp, and we can also consume that content on LinkedIn. And if you can believe, like even like Waze, I was like researching about that, and now it's possible you have like stories on Waze. But what those stories they have in common? They have in common, it's a basic thing. You don't have the power to control the content 100%. So they have their servers, they have their application, and they handle that content the way that they want. And it means that, for example, we have like moments that you post with stories, and you just have like 24 hours. If you want to share that again, you need to go and save in a specific format, and that will depend from who handled that information. So the app will handle that, and that's a thing that bring, in my opinion, that web stories is a really special thing, and brought my attention because we have a few items that we're gonna talk about. But first, that the new quote, the double quote about like the new format, web stories, it's AMP stories. So if you were the last year at the DevFest, we had a workshop related to AMP, and there we talk about like AMP, and I have mentioned like AMP stories, and that was a thing that was released the end of 2018, and we had a talk on 2019 at the Google I/O. Was like beginning of like 2019. We had this presentation that was like the web stories was already like the AMP stories was already ready and was stable, but that project became big, and I think that's why became like from AMP stories to web stories, and now we have like a whole new ecosystem like grow around the web stories. But if you think about that, like why we are just talk about that now, I think are like two main points. Now we have like this really stable infrastructure, and also we have the user part that we have like really interesting things now that will be like a kind of like a boost for you post your web stories, and we're going to talk about that as well. But first, the pros that we can see. So the content is yours, so you handle the content. You can do anything with that content, so you can store it for 24 hours or 1 year, 2 years, so you can do whatever you want with that content. There is a flexibility for you create the type of content that is the main structure, that is full immersive experience. You tap to the left, to the right to navigate between those pages. You have a frame of seconds that page will be displayed to the user. But they styrofoam buttons, everything you can change. And also, there is no restriction about the type of content that you're gonna put that. So you can have the type of content that are like image, text, and different things, and you can just put everything together. But you can do whatever you want. So you can do a online course. You can do like a branding advertisement for one hotel or one city, and that's like a really open field now that we can use that. And everything is shareable, everything is linkable, it's indexable. So we are talking about HTML, and we are talking about the open web. So when you post that, any search engine will find that. You can just copy the link and share for any person. You can embed in any page, so you can use like iframes to embed that in different places and create links and connect those dots. And you can track. So some platforms give you like a tool that you can track, but you can put like Google Analytics. You can use like a search console over that platform. And the advertising support, it's open. So there is no restrictions for you put ads on that. So it means that you also can like earn money with that content. So you can create the content and you can put ads there, and you can take some profit over the content that you create. When in those closed platforms, they manage the way that you're gonna earn money. So, and also they are more interested on that. So if someone display ads, doesn't go for you, that money goes to that company that like display that. But in that situation, you can have the control over that as well. It's my content, and I can kind of control the way that I will put the ads there. And the main thing that we have for 2020 is like web stories are everywhere now. So we have web stories on the search, we have web stories on Google Image, and we have web stories on the discovery. So just for we understand the part of like Google discovery, we are talking about 800 million users that are possible for you achieve that with your content. You create that content, and if someone is interested about New York, they will get the web stories related to New York. And if you're on the first page, you're gonna get those users as well. And what that means that on Google Discovery, it's based on the user interest. So it is not like a random user that will see that content. No, it's someone that is really interested about that subject. So if you are interested about coding, you're gonna receive on your Google Discovery posts and content related to coding. And that's a really high percentage of like the user click on that stories on that content. And if they, for example, in some situations as well, if someone is like in one place and try to discover something, someone is like in Portugal and is like searching for things to do, they will get that information as well related on the location of that user. So, and that's a really push for that platform, because now we have that organic like user that you can just push to that type of content. So, and now that we saw the benefits for that, so how can I create that that content? How can I create a web stories? We have two ways. So one way is the coding part that you just like from the scratch, you create like your one web stories, or you can use visual editors. So visual editors, we have loads of visual editors now, and those items are just like increase, and we now have like really powerful like platform that just run on the web, and you can just like push your creative over those elements without any code. But if you are interested in code, so now we're going to see like how we can do that now. So the coding part, how that works. First, web stories is still over the AMP umbrella. So we need to have an AMP page to include our web stories. So, and with that, we have different ways to start, but this is like one really good option that is the AMP boilerplate. So there is an address that's like amp.dev/boilerplate. There on that address, you're gonna get this like scaffolding for you start your project. So when we have our first line here, it's just on the HTML tag, we have this bold sign, can be like an AMP sign as well. With that, we will tell to our browser to say, oh, this is an AMP content, and you're gonna render as an AMP content, but after we're gonna see the import for the AMP script and the whole base for that. And so that's the base configuration that you'll have in one AMP page. And you don't need to memorize that. So you just go to boilerplate and get that base, and you just put in your project and you start coding that. Once that I have my page, the first step is we create our web stories. And the web stories, as we can see here, we have the AMP-stories. So those elements, there are web components. So it means that they, like the whole browser is like supporting, recognize this as value like HTML content, and that is connected with JavaScript, and the JavaScript you do the whole interactivity and the performance part. It will just handle that for you and kind of like abstract the whole JavaScript part, and we just use the web components from AMP. In that case, we have our full components that are AMP stories. So we're gonna have the properties for that are expected. So we have the format that will be standalone, the publisher, it is who's like posting that web stories, the title of our web stories. We have the logo for the publisher, and after we're gonna have the poster image. So will be different formats for the poster image. So that image will be the image that will be displayed on the search on different platforms when the user search for that. So, and that's a really important thing, that we need to have those elements, because that's how the search, Google image, and Discovery will catch that content. And after that, we're gonna have our page. So we're gonna have inside the tags, page by page, we're gonna create our content. We also can use some elements to help us to create our layout. So in that situation, we have the AMP-stories grid layout. So kind of like help us to create like a grid structure. So that also help us that we don't need to worry about the different screens or different layouts, that everything will be responsible for us, like AMP will handle that for us. And inside that, we have our content. So I just like put some dumb content that I just put like, hello, Chrome Dev Summit extended, and there is a talk again, but that's just a test. And so when I just get together everything just like for different ways, we will have a structure, something like that. I didn't create any special layout for that, but we have an example here. So we have the first page and we have the next page, and the navigation between pages, the time, everything, we don't need to worry about. I can change that, but it means that we just get that infrastructure with the whole performance part, and with functionality, for example, the share button, that we can have the control like to share, and then we can specify where we're going to share that. So, and for that, we're going to use some components. Those components, they can be displayed in different parts and scenarios, but most of them will be displayed at the last part. Like when the user like consume the whole web stories, they will just get at the end, and we can display, for example, in my case, for example, was like a web stories for the Chrome Dev Summit Extended. So there I can put, like, for example, a sign up. So before I just had the lineup for the whole speakers. So when I have previously, like I have the whole talks there and the user will pass through one-on-one. And at the end, they can just, oh, if you're interested, just sign up for our event, or we can share a product or can give like a discount for that user. And that's also a really interesting thing, because if the user gets it at the end, it means that they're really interested about that subject, and the conversion that time will be higher, and that's a special place. And for that, we will use a component that is like the AMP story bookend. That component, we need to specify a JSON file, and that JSON file will handle the information for us. And the information that we're gonna have will be where the user can share that. In that situation, we have the version on the top, and after we will have the share provider. So I can specify just like the platform, can be email, Tumblr, can be like, we have some options for native or Facebook, LinkedIn. We have all possible platforms that we can share. So if I want to customize there, I would just select the items that I want. And also we can change the text that the user will share. For example, that provider that was Twitter, I just select the text and I can put anything. For example, when the user click on share on Twitter, we'll open a window with that text that we define. So it can be also something that's generated like automatically. For example, discount code for users. Or if you share your friends, you get a 10% discount, and that can be generated like dynamically as well. So because we have a JSON file, we can like from our backend side create that page for the user. And the component that we saw previously was created like is the heading component. The heading component, I just put like the text, like for the user, if the user want to sign up to the event, and I can select the type. So in that case, I just select the small type, the title. As you can see here, the title was defined here, the URL you get from the image, and also the image for that logo. In that situation, just like copy and paste the image from the event, like the Chrome Summit extended, and the link that the user will go. In that situation, I just select the sign up link. And so it can be anything there. And talk about links. It's something important that we can mention as well. On web stories, we can put one link for ads by story, and by page we can have like unlimited links, but there are some recommendations. So the maximum is like three links. You can have like 3 links per page, but the ideal is we have just one. If you talk about one subject, you can say, oh, sign up here by page, for example. The situation that we have here, each speaker can have a link that will go to the bio for that talk and the description for that talk. So I can have for each page have that option to redirect the user. So we don't have the problem that we have on some platforms that we need to do if you want to know more, go to the bio, link in the bio, or you try to do some ways, or just like type the URL on the image, but the user can't interact with those like links. But in that situation, with our web stories, we have the total control. So we have HTML content. I can put like in reference there. I can put a link that will redirect the user to another place, or I can like create a link for other web stories as well. So we already saw that, like talk about SEO. So it means that we have our web stories ready, and so I want to publish that, and I want to get the whole power from the discovery and the Google search. So first, what we need to do is we need to have valid AMP content. That means we need to have valid web stories. And for that, we have that tool that is like search.google.com/test/AMP, and there we can test our AMP pages. Also, we can use some extensions like Chrome extensions, but the difference between those two elements, the Chrome extensions, you tell you, oh, your content is valid, but one difference is for that platform, you can see how the search will display your content. You can have a preview how the search will display your web stories, for example. After we can like tracking and analyze our content, so it means that the Google Search Console now recognize there is a category. So if you have the Search Console connected to your tool, you can track in that. You can see how your search is like performing for your web stories on search the Search Console. And that part is the whole tracking part where you can have also analytics, Google Analytics connected with that, because everything's web, everything's like you can just like have other platforms as well for tracking, not Google Analytics. You can have external platform as well. In the part of the visual editors, what we have, so we have one options that are the standalone versions of the visual editor. So we have Make Stories and AMP Stories. There is another like huge list of visual editors, and on those platforms you can just create your web stories. You can embed your web story as, for example, a YouTube video. You just like get that and just embed it on your page, or you can just link and reference to those items. And the other like solution that was released this year, it is a WordPress plugin. So also you can use web stories in WordPress application as well. So you can use that, and with that plugin, you have the same power, the visual editor. So with the task that I applied for C on the Search Console, those pages are handled by a WordPress application. So I just like create that task. It's really simple, the visual editor. I just create my stories. I don't know. The first one took time because I need to understand how the tool works. But the other ones with like 15 minutes, 20 minutes was a really short one. I had my web story ready. And the link to, if you have any like WordPress application you want to test, is wordpress.org/plugins/web stories. So those are the options that we have like visually without any code. So inside the AMP documentation, you're gonna have a link with the whole different options that you can use. And inside the WordPress platform, you just search on the plugins library. You're gonna find the web stories plugin as well, and also there is a page specifically for that plugin. And now that we see the whole options, now what is the future for web stories? Now that we just saw this whole baseline growing, the future that we have, like something that it is already like available, and we have some interactive content. So we can put some interaction on our web stories. So we can put a quiz, or we can put like some yes or no questions that we see some platforms. And also there are like some work going on comments. And so that part, the interactive part, because we are on the web, so the possibilities are like really like open. So everything that we have on the web, we can like just bring to AMP stories as well, that are web stories. So those components, those examples that I'm showing here, there is the link on the bottom. I will just share that presentation after. And if you want to get in touch on that, if you want to get involved, like, and see what's happening, like highlights, there are a working group related to that, so that you can just follow on Slack or GitHub, and you can just see the discussions over the new features and what are going on with the platform and what are the plans for that. And in another high level, if you're not really into code, because the working group, like GitHub part, will be more related to code, but you are not related to the code part, but the content part, there is a new channel that is like Google Web Creators. So that channel, they have like weekly content there. So many of those references that I use in that presentation are like based on the videos that we had at that channel. So we have some videos about accessibility. We have videos about SEO. We have some showcase stuff, and that place is really like, it's really flexible about the coding part, because that channel is focused on the creators, who creates content, and how to make it easy for them to use the benefit of the web. So, and we are just like getting to the end of just like giving an overview now. So reviewing that what we saw. So first thing, web stories. The content's yours. You want the content. You can like create anything. There's like really like open field that you can do what you want, because you can like code. You can use like different like tools for that, like image, video, animation. So you can use like CSS animations for make your web stories. There is no 24 hours time, so the content's still there and stay until when you want. No link in the bio, so you can control how to link your stories. It is open web, it is indexable, and also another things like it is accessible as well. Accessibility is something that it's really important thing inside that project as well. We have a few elements that we can improve the accessibility, and also we have like loads of recommendations to create web stories. So I think that's it. If someone have any questions related to web stories, I would love to answer. And let's see. I will just have a look now on the comments. Questions?
Great. Thank you so much. And yes, everyone, please do feel free to ask any questions. I can get started. So what sort of like projects do you think would really benefit from web stories? Like what kind of, yeah, if I'm building something like.
Yeah, so I think, for example, my side, I create content for developers. So I have my technical blog, and for me, it was an option that I have to just recycle my content and put it in a new way, because we like when you work with like technical content, or you want to like teach someone, every person works in a different way. For example, I'm more old school. I love to use, for example, blog posts, read, and I have like younger friends that prefer like videos. And now we have like a new generation that just grow with like stories, and they are more used to that platform, and they really love to see something and learn something using that. It's just a different way to share. And in my case, was like a new option to get like a new type of user to my content in a different way. It's kind of like achieve those users that are like, for example, I have like a huge base on like blog posts, and how can I just bring that to that new range of users? And that's on my experience. And the other side, I think it's one area that's really affected now. There's like tourism, but will be something that we will see more. So, for example, when you go to a place and you just search, you're gonna see web stories, like a whole feed about that place, and that can be used like for cities, restaurants, any like small business, like be on the web and like be findable. That's a really good option. The interactive part, that is like landing now. For example, we can like do course on like have quizzes inside, so you can have like a language course and you just like put some content there, and at the end you have a quiz over that situation, over that content. So, and we're really, that's the nicest thing. Like we're gonna have like loads of like different showcase about that. So inside the documentation, there's a really like some really good stories related, for example, big producers, like for example musicians and magazines. They already have these like options and that range of content, like with video interactivity, and the documentation, we're going to see good examples. So it's like m.dev. If you go to the web source session, there we're going to find like the showcase area.
Awesome. How did you get started with web stories? Is this something you've been working with for a while? Is this a fairly recent thing?
Yeah, I have seen that last year, but I was like, wasn't my kind. Like, wasn't my type of content. That's the thing. I say I have some friends. I was like, oh my god, Twitter is like have web story. Like Twitter have stories now, and like, oh, how can I like remove that? But if you're like think about yourself, if you think about users, there is a big range of people that consume that type of content. And when we get the WordPress plugin this year, I contribute with the translation. So there are loads of like plugins from, for example, the AIM plugin, the web stories plugin. I contribute with the Portuguese version. So the Brazilian Portuguese, I have done the translation. And once that I started like looking for the content, translating, kind of like analyze the content and see the whys and also the discover part. And I was like, okay, I will make a test and I will use on my blog post or just like see how it works. And I just got the result. I just got the users that came from that, and kind of I can track, I can see where they are, where they came from, and until which part they are interested in, and which type of content works better. And when it was like kind of like trying, and I started like using more of that, and think that like 2021 will be like a really like will be a turning point. If that will be the thing, or because that feature was released in Brazil and India and United States, but last year we're gonna have like worldwide. So some of my web stories was in Brazilian Portuguese, and that's why I got first. I got that like first like range of users, because it is in the format of like not that way in Brazil. But like next year we're gonna have like worldwide that functionality, and we're gonna have more like showcase about that.
All right. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic talk. I really enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. And I think just my last slide. So, obrigado, and thank you, everyone, for being here. And so, enjoy the event. I will just like watch the next talk now, and I hope that everyone enjoy. And my user, Fellyph, if you wanna follow me any social media, and I think that's it. Thank you, guys.
All right.
See you.
Okay, and we have our next speaker coming up. So would you like to introduce her?
Hi. So coming up, we have Stanimira. I think I pronounced her name correctly, and she is Angular GDE, and she's also a co-organizer for Angular Sofia meetup. And she works for VMware, and she will be talking about the ESLint rules and the Angular schematics today. So, hi, Stanimira.
Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. So, so the stage is yours. We are looking forward towards your session.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll let you get started with that. Have fun.
Perfect.
Looking forward to listening.
Thanks. I hope you can all see my screen by now.
Yes.
Awesome. So, perfect. My topic today is how we can use custom ESLint roles together with Angular schematics and why. So we'll get into that. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm not going to go through that all by myself, which is nice. And the topic of my presentation is essentially breaking changes with a bit of ESLint as well. And the only truth that is universal about breaking changes is that no developer likes them. And this is because developers are usually paid to build new features and not migrate to the latest version of the coolest library ever. So breaking changes are not really helping business move forward. They're not helping ship great products or anything like that. But updating to latest and updating to migrating breaking changes can be easy. There are many libraries nowadays, especially in the JavaScript world, that show us that updating to latest is not hard. And after this talk, I promise you that you will know how to make breaking changes painless. Whether you're a library maintainer or an application developer, you will learn how to use ESLint and Angular schematics, if you're an Angular user, of course, to make that process easier, either for your library users or for your coworkers and anyone else who works in your application. But let's get started with ESLint. I'm just going to pretend that no one knows what is ESLint, even though if you're a JavaScript developer, you probably have worked with that or another linter in your life. So ESLint is a JavaScript linter. It analyzes your code and it finds problematic patterns. Let's see how it actually works. So I have a very, very simple JavaScript project here. I'm just going to zoom in to make sure everyone sees it. And I have just a single file in it. This is the content of the file. And as you can see, according to some JavaScript guides and maybe the most popular teaching materials, you have to use semicolons at the end of every line. And we don't have that here. So this could be an issue if you're working with a team that has this practice of using semicolons. Also, this code uses the var keyword instead of let and const. And again, some guides and some style guides essentially recommend using either const or let. So I have ESLint set up in this project, and I also have a list of rules that ESLint is going to follow when it analyzes my code. And in this list of rules, I have specified that my team or anyone working on this project should put semicolons at the end of the line. And I have also specified that they should avoid the var keyword. So in order to execute ESLint, I'm going to use the npx command and then specify ESLint, because ESLint is a dependency of the project, and npx is essentially going to pull up the ESLint binary from the node module's instance of ESLint. Then I'm going to specify the src directory as the root folder that should be analyzed. And I'm just going to go ahead and execute it. This is the usual output that we get when ESLint finds some problems in our code. So we have a bunch of errors here, and I already mentioned that I'm enforcing using letter const instead of var. Also, I'm enforcing the usage of semicolons. There's one more issue over here, that the variable b is assigned a value, but it's never used. So you can probably remove it from the code. And on the rightest hand side, the rightmost column, you see the name of these rules in the ESLint context. So this is, for instance, the no var rule. the semi rule, and the no unused vars rule. These are the rules that ESLint applies to our source code. And we also have a suggestion to use the fix option. Let's just go ahead and execute the same command again and provide it with the fix option and see what happens. We get less errors. And I can see that my file has changed. See what happened here. So what happened is that the rule for semicolons, when it is applied with the fix option, it automatically fixes the code for us. We can see that there are still a bunch of other errors, but apparently this rule, the semi rule, has something that can also fix our code for us. Let's go back. So we saw a bunch of things here. First of all, we have rules that ESLint applies when traversing our code, and we also have fixes that can be also applied by the rules. But let's see how ESLint works under the hood, of course, on an abstract level. First, ESLint takes our source code, and it runs it through a parser. The default parser for the JavaScript language is called Esprit. And this parser produces a data structure called an abstract syntax tree. And this is an example of a source code and the resulting data structure whenever the parser outputs. In this case, we have an import declaration, and this data structure is a tree. So we have one root node, which is of type import declaration. This root node has specifiers, and we have an imported specifier. This is essentially the search bar over here, so we can probably have many imported statements or identifiers. And the import declaration also has a source, and the source is the place where we are importing from. So nothing very special, just a tree that contains abstract tokens describing our code. It is abstract because it doesn't actually, it can be a different source code can be produced based on the tree. That's why it's abstract, I think. So we have our source code, the abstract syntax tree. Then ESLint gets that tree and it applies certain rules that we have provided in a specification for our project. And these rules give us a report. And this is the errors report that we saw. And it also gives us certain fixes that we can apply if we use the fix option. And the coolest thing about ESLint from today's topic perspective is that ESLint is highly customizable, which means that we can replace lots of these parts with our custom things. So we can have custom rules, which can generate our own errors and our own fixes. And we can also have a custom parser. So if we want to apply ESLint to TypeScript, there is a way, and that way is to use the TypeScript ESLint parser. And because I'm going to write my rule and the Angular schematics part in the context of Angular, which is just TypeScript, we're going to be using the TypeScript ESLint parser for our ESLint rule and for our schematics. But of course, if you want to execute your rules only on JavaScript projects, you can use the default parser, Esprit. And you might be wondering, what about ESLint? If you're using TypeScript, especially with Angular, you probably use ESLint. The reason why I'm talking about ESLint today is that ESLint is being deprecated. So in one happy moment, everyone is going to move to ESLint. And that's why I don't want to talk about deprecated technologies. All right, so what we learned in this section is that we can write custom ESLint rules to detect deprecated APIs or any source pattern that we want. And we can also fix these deprecated APIs. But how can we provide migrations out of the box? For instance, if we are a library maintainer and we want our users to get their migrations out of the box instead of having to set up ESLint and executing it manually on their projects, how can we ship that together with our library so that when people install our library, they also get their code migrated? Well, the ng-update command of the Angular CLI actually does that for us. Of course, in this example, it does that for Angular, but it can also do that for our libraries. That's probably a very important cliffhanger, but that's not important. So in this example, we use ng-update together with Angular core and Angular CLI. And when we execute this command inside our project, it is going to update to the latest stable versions of the two packages, and it's also going to execute migration scripts to make sure that we have our code is working with the latest versions of Angular core and the Angular CLI, and basically all other Angular packages. Let's see that in action quickly. I'm executing ng-update on an Angular project. My package.json is being updated, and some migrations are also being executed. If we see that quickly again, we can see that the Angular CLI is updating a package.json, installing the newest packages, and running some migrations. And as I said already, we can use ng-update for our own libraries as well. So it is also a customizable command. And today I'm going to show you how to use ESLint together with ng-update. So we're going to learn how to write an ESLint rule that detects and fixes a deprecated API. And then we're going to integrate the rule inside our own ng-update so that whenever someone executes ng-update our library in their project, their code is going to be migrated for them without them having to do anything specific. Cool. We need the deprecated API. And this is an example from a library that I used to work on some time ago. It's NativeScript. And the deal with NativeScript is that at some point we introduced that kind of breaking change, even though it wasn't a breaking change because we just deprecated the old API. So the old API was importing search bar from this path over here, UI search bar. And the new API was that users had to import search bar from TNS core modules UI search bar. And yeah, you can basically see the difference. This looks pretty straightforward, and you might want to migrate your code with regular expressions. And this is probably doable in this situation, but you will probably miss some cases. And you might migrate something that you don't want to migrate, because with regexes, you're working with strings. And when writing ESLint rules, you're working with a data structure that actually represents the actual source code and can be analyzed in a predictable way. So I definitely recommend using ESLint rules whenever you can, because they're actually pretty easy to set up and to write. And they have many more benefits than migrating your source code with regular expressions. So let's go ahead and write an ESLint rule. For this example, I'm going to use a website called, let's go over here, ESTX4. This is the URL. Of course, it's also in the presentation, and you're going to have the slides after my talk, so you can just grab it, and you don't have to remember it. All right, we have on the left-hand side here our source code that we want to migrate, basically. And on the right-hand side, we have the abstract syntax tree that is going to be generated by the parser whenever the parser runs through our source code. And you can see here that the language is JavaScript, and the parser that I'm using is TypeScript ESLint, because as I said, we're going to try to execute that code on Angular projects which use TypeScript. All right, what is the abstract syntax tree? The root node is a node of type program, And inside, we have a body of the program and a couple of expressions over here. You can see that my expressions are highlighted on the right, on the left, and I can also select this expression and go directly to its corresponding node in the AST. So we have an import declaration, and we also have an expression statement. And this expression statement is here just to show you that with an ESLint rule, we can catch such cases. So we have a console log that has the exact same text that we're migrating, but we actually don't want to migrate that because it's not an import declaration. It is some static string or some static value in our application that has nothing to do with its program flow. So we don't want to catch that, and we don't want to migrate it. And of course, if I was using search and replace or a regular expression, I was probably gonna migrate that, and I shouldn't have done it, if that makes sense. All right, so we want to catch the import declaration and migrate that to TNS Core Modules UI search bar. The transform pane is at the bottom. This is the actual rule that we're going to be writing. And whenever the rule is executed on our source code, it's going to give us a report over here. Now you can see that we have an empty rule, and the lint rule is not fired. All right, so the rule is a function that returns some object. And inside this object, we have to specify with key value pairs the nodes that we want to traverse. And in this case, I want to traverse all import declarations. That's why my key is going to be import declaration. And the value should be a function that has a single argument, which is the traverse node. And let's just quickly walk the node and see if we have the correct one. All right, we have the node over here. We see that its type is import declaration. We have the specifiers, which are, the specifiers correspond to our node as well. As you can see, we have a specifier search bar. Let's look at the source as well. Yeah, we have a source, and our source has a value of UI search bar. We're going to be using this value over here. UI search bar. Cool. So how do we know if this node needs to be migrated? Well, if the source is UI search bar, then we want to migrate it. So if the node source value is equal to UI search bar, first we want to report an error. So I'm going to use the context object that comes from over here, and I'm going to fire the report method. And inside, we have to say which is the problematic node. And I'm going to say that the node source is problematic. So this is the what is going to be underlined in the report. And I also going to have a message that says importing from UI search bar is disallowed. Awesome. And we can see that when the rule is fired, we have that error. Over here, this path is underlined, and we have UI search bar is disallowed. And in order to fix that error, I'm going to use a fixer. Okay, I'm going to provide a fix. And this fix is a function that has an argument called fixer. And with this fixer, we can replace text, nodes, or anything in our code. It has several methods. We're going to use actually the replace text method. And another important thing is that we have to return it. I'm going to replace the text of node source. And as I said, I want to have TNS Core Modules UI search bar. And what I get is a parsing error because I don't have quotes around TNS Core Modules UI search bar. I'm just going to add them real quick. And now I have my fixed code, which is cool. A quick note here, if you want to preserve the original quotes, because we might have single quotes in our original text, you can probably use the node source row value. But I'm not going to focus on that. Let's just quickly take a look at the node. What I meant is that in the source, we also have a row value which contains the original quotes. So we can use that instead of just putting our own quotes here. But anyway, we did what we wanted to do, right? And this is just 16 lines of code to fix our issue. Of course, there are many ways to import stuff in JavaScript because up until very soon, we didn't have proper modules. And we probably still don't, we'll have to support other older methods of importing stuff in JavaScript for a long time. So you might have require statements or different types of importing stuff. But to detect them, you just have to specify many different node types and traverse them all. You just have to iterate through all the cases, but the core logic is the same. Cool. Let's go back. So how do we ship the rule after we wrote it? First, of course, we want to have to write it locally, and then we can distribute it as packed inside an ESLint plugin. And the ESLint plugin is an NPM module. The name format should be ESLint plugin / the name of the plugin. And in this case, when I wrote that rule, the ESLint plugin was called ESLint native script. Another option is to use scoped package. So at native script, ESLint plugin also works. And of course, this is a live plugin. It's on NPM, and you can go later and take a look at it. It contains all the cases that I mentioned, all the types of traverses, all the versions of importing stuff in JavaScript. Then we have to specify our rules inside the index file in our plugin. And the usual way of naming rules in ESLint is by using dash case. So I'm going to just call this rule no short imports, and this is going to point to my ESLint rule. And if you want to use the plugin, you have to add a few dependencies. First, of course, the plugin itself, ESLint, and the TypeScript parser if you have a TypeScript project. Then you need an ESLint configuration file. And in this file here, I'm specifying the parser, then something that is going to say to ESLint that I'm going to be using ECMAScript modules and import decorations as well. Then all the plugins that are custom should be also specified in the plugins key value pair. So I'm going to be using the NativeScript plugin. And the rule from the plugin is no short imports, and no short imports is going to throw an error whenever it finds something problematic in the code. It can also be, this value can also be a warning or warn, I think. But in this case, it's not just an error. So in order to fix the code, you have to execute npx ESLint. You also have to specify the TS extension if you're using that inside a TypeScript project, then the source directory, and finally the fix option. And whenever we do that inside a project with problematic code, without the fix option, we get the error that we want. And with the fix option, we actually get our code migrated. As you can see, it's exactly what we wanted to do. Cool. Up next, how do we use library migrations with ng-update? This is probably interesting for anyone who's using Angular and works on an Angular project. So to take a step back, we're going to be using a tool called Schematics. And this is a project transformation tool that allows you to create new files, update files, or execute certain tasks in a declarative way. So you can write a simple schematic script and then execute it on your project, and this is going to transform your project structure or project files in some way that you have specified. Sounds very abstract, but it's actually pretty simple and cool. The Angular CLI uses schematics quite a lot, actually. The ng-generate command uses schematics to generate components. And also you can write your own schematics if you didn't see that coming. And you can actually have your own collection of schematics and your own components inside it that are customized. The ng-add command also uses schematics, so that if you have a library and you want to execute some setup script, whenever that library is ng-added to a user project, you can put that inside your library as a ng-add schematic. And ng-update, the command that we're going to be focusing on today, also uses schematics, so that whenever you execute ng-update the name of some library, this is going to update to the latest stable version of the library. And finally, it's going to execute some migration scripts that are defined inside that library. How can we make the library ng-updatable, though? First, we need the ng-update key. For this part, I'm not going to do any live coding because I don't want to bore you anymore. But I'm just going to walk you through the code. Of course, it's quite many moving bits, so you don't have to remember all of it. You can, again, find this presentation later and plug out anything that you might need. But just to give you an abstract idea of how actually easy it is to set up ng-update. So inside the package.json of your library, you need an ng-update key and a migrations key that points to a JSON file. That JSON file is a collection of all your schematics and all your migration scripts. I'm just going to call them scripts from now on instead of schematics. And the actual code for the script is over here. So it's specified by the factory key. And this is the code for an empty migration script. Just take a step back and make it easier to understand the code and what we'll be doing. In schematics, arguably the most important concept is the tree. And the tree has a base, which is a representation of the project at this point of time, and also some actions that will be applied to the base. So we collect certain actions in that tree, and when the script finishes, the schematics engine is going to apply all these actions to the base. A rule is a function that takes a tree and returns another tree, or it might be the same tree with more actions. And a rule factory is a function that returns a rule. So essentially, it's a function that returns a function that returns a tree. That's why it's a rule factory. All right, in our example that we saw 3 minutes ago, we have our rule over here, a function that takes a tree and returns the same tree. And we have our rule factory, which is kind of the wrapper for our script. How do we provide options? Well, we have, if we go back to the migrations JSON file, the collection with all our migrations, we have a schema.json file. And in the schema.json, I'm not going to go through all that, but we have properties, and these properties can be provided whenever someone is executing that migration. And in this case, we have the project property, and this property is actually automatically added by the Angular CLI, the ng thing. And to use this project name, we have to specify the options argument in the rule factory and then extract project from options. This is going to give us the name of the project, which is going to be important later on. What else can we do with schematics? Well, to read files, we're going to use the tree read method, and we need to provide it with a file path, and this is going to give us a buffer that we can then convert to string. To read directories, we can use tree get directory, and this is going to give us an object that can be traversed with the visit method. And with this visit method, we can traverse each path in the directory. To edit files, the easiest way is to use the tree overwrite method and specify the file path and the new content that we want to put inside this file. All right, we want our schematic to be able to find the source directory of the project, read all TypeScript and JavaScript files, and then we wanted to apply the ESLint rule that we wrote to their content. Let's start step by step. Oh, actually, yeah, we also want to finally rewrite these files with the fixed content. So first, how do we find the source directory? One way to do it, which might not be the best based on the latest Angular schematic source code, is to grab the Angular JSON file and then just extract the source root from that JSON file. How do we find JavaScript and TypeScript files? All right, step by step. First, we have an array function that takes a path and checks if this path ends with TS or JS. We can say that this is the TypeScript or JavaScript file. And then we can have, we should get the source directory with tree get dir. And then I'm just declaring a simple set of files that should be fixed. These are going to be the TypeScript and JavaScript files. And then I'm just going to visit each path in this source directory. And if this path is JavaScript or TypeScript file, I'm just going to add that to the set. Finally, I'm just returning the set, and we have our files. How do we apply the ESLint rule? One way is to execute it through the command line, which we were doing earlier, but we can also use the JavaScript API of ESLint and do that programmatically. So I can import the linter from ESLint rule, all the rules that I want for my plugin, the parse function from the TypeScript ESLint parser, and then I'm just going to create a new instance of this linter. I'm going to define the rule that I want, the parser that I want, and then I'm just going to execute verify and fix over a file content. So this is taking a single file, grabbing its content, and executing the rule to that file, and also getting the fixed source codes from the messages output. Finally, to rewrite the files, I'm going to traverse every single JavaScript and TypeScript file, get its contents with this helper function that we saw early on, apply the ESLint rule to this content, and if we have any differences, then I'm going to call tree overwrite and fix that file. That's all. Let's see what happens if we execute ng update with the schematic. First, npm is going to install the latest version of the library. Then it's going to update the package.json to put the latest version there as well. npm install takes a while, even on pre-recorded videos. And then finally, some script is executed to migrate it. And as you can see, this is exact same migration that we have early on. I'm not going to watch that again. But that was everything that I wanted to show you. If you need any of this content later on, the first link over here is the link to the presentation. This is the actual plugin that contains all the different import decorations, require statements, and everything that should be migrated by the ESLint rule. The ng update demo is over here, and AST Explorer with the code that we wrote is the latest link. So thank you all very much, and I hope you enjoy that.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed your talk. I can just ask, I guess, one quick question. Are there any custom rules that you'd recommend for any project, or do you think it differs very much with what specifically you're doing?
I guess it depends on your team setup, and I just recommend having a set of rules, or even if you're not using ESLint or Prettier or ESLint on anything like that, I think it's very helpful to have a style guide and a set of rules that your team follows. And for the custom parts, maybe if you notice any problematic pattern in your code that happens from time to time, or any flaky tests, for example, or something that causes performance issues, I recommend just writing an ESLint rule that catches that for your team and for your project.
So fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for being here. So, all right. I'll just quickly introduce our next speaker, Paul, who is the lead for Chrome and Web Developer Relations at Google. So I will bring him on. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. We can let you get started if you like.
Yeah, let's do it. It should be good.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Cool. Hello, everyone. My name's Paul. I lead our Chrome Developer Relations team, which it's a pretty good team, right? We're probably about, I think 30, 32, 33 people across the globe. There's actually a couple of teams in developer relations that kind of focus on the web. We get to do quite a lot of really cool stuff. And, one of the things that we do is kind of, prepare events like the Chrome Dev Summit. This was when the Chrome Dev Summit was a kind of in person. This one was 2018. Obviously, we've had one in 2019 as well. And kind of one of our jobs is to kind of design and run, each of these big events. And that includes like setting the narrative and the overall agenda for the event as well. And I think that's kind of, some of the stuff that I wanted to try and focus on today was like, try and give you a little bit more of a behind the scenes to why we did Chrome Dev Summit the way we did, what it meant, kind of like how we use it to try and tell the story for the year ahead, and also how we use it to try and get feedback from the developer ecosystem as well. I think one of the things that I look for in Chrome Dev Summit is it's like we are in a very lucky position on the team to be able to kind of experiment on the web platform, build brand new things that have never been really seen before on that side, and we kind of need to kind of tell the story of modern web development, or what we think is modern web development. We're not always kind of, people have got different opinions, right? So it depends. It depends, I suppose, on who you want to listen to, I suppose, on that side of things. But we have an opinion for how we think people could be building for the web, and we like to kind of like show you kind of where we're going. So I do want to use this talk to kind of set the scene for why we talked about what we did basically at Chrome Dev Summit as well. And so I'll go through some of the overarching top story as well. But I think the one thing I will say is I have a very lucky job, right? The hard bit is I have to manage these people who call themselves the talent. So, like Jake and Mariko and Surma and Paul Lewis and everything as well. They cause me a lot of pain, I think is the easiest way of saying it. But they do create good events. And you probably saw them, maybe watch some of the Chrome Dev Summit with, some of the kind of the interstitial events that we did before as well, which is kind of cool. Before we kind of dive in too much further, it was kind of a weird year this year in terms of obviously the Chrome Dev Summit. The pandemic obviously was a really big factor. And so like, we were at the time of this tweet in April, I think we'd already pretty much decided not to run the Chrome Dev Summit in person. Like we basically just didn't feel like it was a sensible thing to do. We didn't know there was going to be a vaccine, right? Like, we were sitting there going, we want to connect people, we want to speak to people, we want to hear from developers in the ecosystem, but we don't want someone to get sick. Like if someone got sick at any one of our events, it seems a little bit weird. And just at this same time as well, like there was a lot of people struggling, right? It wasn't just kind of, the pandemic hit and people were just, oh, cool. Like countries were going into lockdown, right? And businesses were struggling, people were losing their jobs. It just felt really weird to be able to kind of run an event and ask people to go and fly out to an event where it was like, all expenses paid for this kind of not for people flying out there, but like, like a big kind of event on that side of things. It just didn't feel right. And so we decided at that time to kind of pivot our event, right, completely at that point, and how we actually engage with developers. I think we'd already and always had like a very good online presence for the Chrome Dev Summit, but like this was just one of those ones where it's like, yeah, we really need to just not do things, you know, with people like physically with people this year. Like it just doesn't, it's not going to work, and it's going to be really bad if we did do it as well. So yeah, we pivoted to a kind of completely online event. Like, so we built obviously the site. This is the same. It was actually the same site as the Chrome Dev Summit site last year. I was kind of interested today. I saw Vercel announce that they have like an event in a box kind of framework site as well. And like this was actually the intent of our site when we designed it in 2019, was that we could kind of reuse the site again and again and again, and we have actually in this case. I think that the thing here is like when we were thinking about an online only event, you know, what did that mean, right? And so obviously all the talks are online. It was a YouTube premiere, so we wanted to direct everyone's attention to one particular space. But the way that we'd done it, and the thing that we'd learned from like the web.dev live event that we'd ran just in place of Google I/O last year, or this year just gone, it was, how to say this, it was we had long talks basically and no consistency. And so this year we basically decided to focus on like 10-minute talks, keep everything consumable, super bite size. We know that people don't have a huge amount of time at the moment. Event fatigue, online event fatigue, and a whole bunch of other things is kind of a real thing. And if we have a thing that we want to talk to developers about, we don't want to kind of sit there for hours and hours and hours on end, just kind of talking to them about kind of what they should be doing for the web. And so we wanted to make sure that we were a little bit more cognizant, I suppose, of the situation that people were in, right? And so I think one of our goals was to be kind of as asynchronous as possible, consumable content, but also kind of really get hands-on with people as well. So like obviously we had these kind of 10-minute events, but we really pushed into this idea of this isn't actual real office hours, but we ran, I think, maybe 60, 70 different office hours where, you know, developers got 10 to 15, 20 minutes with a Chrome engineer to be able to talk to them about kind of issues that they had, how they can improve on the web, you know, how they can improve their web experiences. And in some cases, just even career advice as well, right? And so like, one of our big goals, always with the Chrome Dev Summit, has been to kind of connect engineers, the engineering team, with external web developers. Because the way I look at it is like we can't build for the web platform effectively if we don't know the kind of the frustrations that developers have day to day, right? And like, you know, what can we optimize for on the web platform? So we actually did a whole bunch of different web office hours as well, and I think they went actually pretty well in the end as well, which is kind of pretty good. And then we also decided to run workshops as well. And so, you know, Rachel, obviously, like Rachel Andrew was a good example. She came and did a 2-day workshop, I think two-hour events, basically, talking about kind of like CSS, basically, and CSS Grid. And so we had quite a few different people from the ecosystem come in to talk to developers. And the whole goal behind this was like, I think a lot of events, they will do workshops around their events. They tend to charge for them. And we're in a very lucky position where, you know, we can afford to pay the workshop owners time to be able to run this at scale at that point. And I think it worked really well as well. So we had obviously CSS, we had a PWA talk, accessibility and JavaScript and performance talks as well. And the whole point behind that is just to try and get developers up to speed with kind of modern, like, you know, basically what's happened in the last year in kind of modern web development, so that when we start to talk about things at the event, you know, it's like it's not all brand new to them, right? Which I think is a pretty good thing. And I think the final piece as well is we wanted to make sure that we obviously miss the real physical connection with people in the real events that we go to and that we run. And so we wanted to see what we can do to try and replicate, you know, some of that, right? And so we built a game, essentially. Tom Greenaway on our team was working on this a lot, called CDS Adventure. I think it's still live and you can kind of go to it. But the idea behind it was like we wanted to showcase all of the things that Chrome and other parts of the web focused teams in Google, like Firebase or Chrome OS or the TensorFlow teams and artificial intelligence teams, kind of showcase what they're doing on the web, powered by the web. And so we obviously built this game experience that kind of, you will go through it and then you would interact with every single experience, and every single experience would have a URL, and we'd be able to kind of hot link people into that and showcase kind of what you can do as well. And so we built this experience, and it actually worked out pretty well. We didn't know the scale it was going to reach, and so it just turned out to be just right, I think, when we were looking at it. So it's actually kind of pretty cool on that side. But I think the bit there was just like it was a nice way to actually engage with people. Like, you knew there was a physical person behind the avatar, at least anyway, and we could do it in a relatively safe way. at that point as well. And so we didn't have to manage abuse and a whole bunch of other stuff. And so we'll see what happens in the future, but I thought that was actually a pretty nice tool. So I think you're all probably, I don't know whether you're all kind of pretty bored, but like my daughter, she just gets bored with me talking about things all the time. But I just kind of wanted to set the scene for like why we chose to do the event that way, because really this talk is about the year ahead, and Chrome Dev Summit as well is about the year ahead. So there's not going to be like a huge amount of new revelation in this talk in particular. But I want to just give you a little bit more, like I said, behind the scenes backstory about why we chose to do what we're doing, and why we think it's actually important as well. So, excuse me, I'm going to go through this pretty quick. I think for me, like one of the obviously the biggest things and why we do the event is that it's people that power the web. Yes, there's browser vendors who build stuff for the web and the ecosystem. But when I look at kind of what's happening, it's people, they build sites, people consume sites, they can build apps, people use apps, all these different types of things. And I think if we really want to try and drive change across the ecosystem, we have to engage with people and the public and developers, and actually be a real presence with people to actually kind of start to see that change over time. And so yeah, I look at my job, the number one job of me and my team at the moment is to connect people. I think that the biggest piece is obviously we always have a story to tell, right? Like new APIs coming out, we think you should use them or we think you should not use them in certain points in time. But I think that the bit here is Chrome obviously is a very big player in the ecosystem in terms of browser market share, I suppose. We don't want to push ahead and just forge ahead and not listen to developers. Like we actually want to solve the needs and pains that developers have every single day built on the web platform. And so obviously events like things like Chrome Dev Summit, yes, we will talk to people about what's happening, but the biggest thing is like we'll listen and we'll take your feedback and we'll work out how to actually prioritize the needs that you have, right? And so like the goal is in Chrome Dev Summit 2021, things that you've told us in the ecosystem, you'll see them in the actual event going ahead and the Chrome platform, or the Chrome's kind of perspective on the web platform, sorry. Yeah, and obviously the other bit is like, we want to make sure that you as developers understand where, we as Chrome are trying to push, our efforts on the web platform as well. I think that what you'll see today as well is when we're kind of covering it is we're pretty aligned with a lot of the browser vendors, right? Like in terms of what's happening, we have some different focuses for other teams. But yeah, you'll kind of see where we're going on that side of things. And we just want to give you an insight because the web platform is changing and there's changes happening across the board, sorry. And we want to make sure that you as developers, you're prepared, right? You have all the tools that you need and you know what's coming ahead. Because like the last thing we want is like a big surprise, like a change. Like the recent example was the same site cookie change that came through. We had to all signal that ahead, like really far ahead of time, because we knew it could fundamentally break the web if it wasn't rolled out well and rolled out correctly. We didn't want to break authentication. We didn't want to break payments. And so we had to kind of signal maybe 2 years ahead of time that this thing was going to happen. And so we want to give you that insight so you're kind of more informed and you can go away and actually build stuff effectively. And so I think I just said it a second ago, but like there are big changes coming to the web platform, and it's not just Chrome obviously pushing forward things. Like Safari's pushing a whole bunch of changes through. Firefox as well, and I'll cover some of the things that are kind of happening. But the biggest thing for me is I'd really want to prepare developers for those changes that are coming through, and so that you can just take advantage of them, or you can migrate as smoothly as possible, I suppose, as the easiest way of saying. And so I think a little bit earlier when I mentioned we listen to developers is one of our biggest things. Like my job is to connect you as a developer ecosystem with the engineering teams and the product management teams inside Google, inside Chrome. We do measure something called developer satisfaction. We don't particularly talk about it. This might be the first time that you've heard about it from our side. But one example of that is we participate heavily in the Web DNA report. So Mozilla run this kind of developer needs assessment every year now. And we did it in 2019. We did it again in 2020. And that actually informs the priorities of the Chrome team. And like one example of this that came from this is, web compat was the biggest issue that developers had across the web. And it was identified in the Mozilla DNA report in 2019. Sorry, it was kind of identified there. We had to do a lot more research, but then we got a prioritized list of all the features that developers need. And so little things like Flexbox in field set support was a really big issue. For whatever reason, the Chrome team was not prioritizing to get it fixed at the time. But developers are telling us it's one of the biggest pain points that they're having on the web platform in terms of grid and Flexbox. It gets fixed, right? And that's all because developers are telling us what happens or what they need on the web platform to be successful. And I think when I look at our job as developer relations and developer experience, kind of teams, like our job is to make it as easy as possible for you to build on the web platform. Like you should be building features, not working around from like functionality issues, right, or compatibility issues. You should be building features and shipping them to your users at that point. And so we take that feedback and we use a lot of other different mechanisms as well. And so, one example was like last year I got the Chrome team, the Blink team, sorry, not the Chrome team, which is like a subset of the wider Chrome team, to focus on fixing issues with over 50 stars. And it sounds relatively trivial, but we have obviously CR bug, which is where we kind of tell developers to obviously submit issues and bugs with the web platform and with Chrome. We just had a whole load of issues that were actually, I don't know the way to say it. They were causing developers a lot of pain and frustration, right? And developers were starring it. And so like stars are a good proxy for us to work out what we should prioritize. And it was actually quite successful, right? Like the Chrome team in the end, I think they fixed maybe 40 of the top bugs. So there's still 100 bugs left with over 50 stars. But I think it was actually a good indication that the Chrome team is starting to like prioritize or reprioritize developer needs at that point as well. It's not the only way that we get feedback, but it was a good proxy, right? And so I think one of the other bits, like this is an internal dashboard that I have as well. There's nothing secret here, but we know what we use as well. It's like one of the other things as well is that we look for top ecosystem issues. Like doesn't matter that star count is there. If we get told on the developer relations team that there's an issue in the ecosystem and developers are struggling or frustrated, we prioritize that as well. And then we work with engineering teams to kind of get them to fix it as well. And so I just like, it's one of those things of like, all that feedback comes from events. It comes from engaging with developers. It comes from meeting people. It comes from one-on-ones that we have as well. So I just want to say like, it's obviously we have a story to tell, which I'll talk about in a second. But the biggest thing is that we actually want the feedback and we want kind of prioritization as well, because ultimately the web is successful when it's easier for you to build on the web. So 2021, I think you probably saw this in the keynote. I think when there's the user perspective, which is like people want safe sites and safe experiences, privacy kept intact. People want fast sites and they want to be able to do whatever they can inside the browser, right? So they want powerful experiences. And I think from the way I look at it as a set of objectives that we have for our team, I'm actually struggling to read this because it's a really small part of the screen. But developers can focus on privacy without breaking everything. Like there's a whole bunch of changes coming through in the whole privacy landscape at the moment and security landscape. It's going to require change, right? And it's always requiring change as well, right? And so like I look at some of the stuff we did with same site that required change. When I look at some of the things that Safari are doing with third-party cookies, completely blocked essentially, and storage access, like all these things require change from developers, right? Developers tell us that they obviously want to build fast sites, but they need to build it easily, right? Like if we go and tell you, or we think you should focus on performance, like the number one thing that we hear about is it's too hard, right? It's too hard to build fast sites at the moment. So we want to obviously make sure it's easier for you to build fast sites easily. And by default, when you build a site, it should be fast. And then also you should be able to kind of ship whatever you need to ship. You shouldn't have to basically go back to whether it's Electron or some other kind of native experience. You shouldn't have to fall back to those experiences to be able to deliver an experience that will delight your users or get you more business or whatever you need to do, on the web. So I think you'll hear some of these things as well. I know I'm kind of running out of time as well. I've got quite a bit further to go. But when I look at a lot of this stuff, you'll hear like major projects, right? If you hear them inside Google, at least anyway, there's Privacy Sandbox, Web Vitals, and PWA and Fugu and installability. They're the big project names. Like if you look out for them, like you'll see where they tie into the overarching story. So if I was thinking about privacy, I mentioned it a couple of times, there's just a lot changing right now. Like I think me and obviously a lot of people, like privacy generally is a fundamental right that people should have on this side of things. And a lot of stuff in the past is, I think the way I look at it is maybe the way that the web was designed, it wasn't as privacy preserving as it could have been. And a lot of technology has been built up on the fact that, cookies will be delivered on other requests and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Like, sign-in, authentication, payments, they're all built on these kind of like loopholes in the web. And like if we were designing the web today, we probably wouldn't have designed it the way that we did, like with the same types of holes it's kind of got at that point. The industry is already changing. There's a whole bunch of things kind of coming through right now. And I mentioned kind of Safari, Chrome, Firefox, like there is just a lot of changes coming through. And we just want to make sure that we can get you ready for those changes. And I think with the way I look at it as well is that all browsers are committed to improving transparency, control, and privacy for users on the web at the moment. And so I think that's a really great thing. But what does it mean? Well, what I would say is like there's probably at least one big project on our side, which obviously the Privacy Sandbox. It focuses on two different areas, reducing cross-site scripting cross-site tracking, and it enables more privacy preserving capabilities as well. And so like as we add more capabilities to the platform, the user's privacy shouldn't be kind of impacted on that side. I'm not going to go this too much, but like there was a really big change recently in the way that kind of we manage cookies on the web. We're requiring the same site by default, and obviously we're not blocking third-party cookies, but you'd have to tell us that it should be used in a third-party context. I think the longer narrative behind this is that I think all browsers are pretty much committed to try and remove third-party cookies from the web, not get rid of cookies completely. Like cookies are needed for state management, but they shouldn't really be used in a third-party context. And I think all browsers are in that space of this needs to change, and the industry and the ecosystem needs to change around it as well. But as we do that, like we just want to make sure that things don't break across the ecosystem, and so it's pretty interesting on that side. I think one of the areas that when I look at this is obviously tracking has been kind of like one part of the web that's happened, and a lot of that has been driven by obviously by cookies in the past. But it's not even cookies. Like fingerprinting generally has been the preserve of a lot of ad networks, I suppose, and other platforms. Fraud prevention. People use like fingerprinting for fraud prevention, right? So they don't get realized losses on their business. And so the question here is just like, how do you stop, or how do you kind of like start to prevent tracking at some point? And so there's this concept which we're working on at the moment, and I encourage everyone to go and look at it as well. It's called the privacy budget, but like it basically aims to limit the ability for fingerprinting. But it does that by kind of managing the budget. So like if you need a Canvas API, which could be used for fingerprinting, you could use it, and it's all fine. Like you don't kind of go through it, but like as you use that API, things get taken from that budget, right? To the point where you could overspend on the budget, and something might happen on that side. I'm obviously glossing over very kind of a high level, because we don't have a huge amount of time to go to it. The other thing as well on that side as well is that obviously the user agent is a primary vector for tracking. It's very kind of easy to identify an individual user from the user agent, right, on that side. And so there are changes coming through, and I'd encourage everyone to look at the user agent client hints API. I think there's still a lot more feedback that kind of is needed in that space as well. But the idea is that you can still detect the user's browser, which you would use for kind of delivering maybe slightly different experiences based on compat and a whole bunch of other stuff. But fundamentally, you shouldn't be able to individually identify a user from the user agent. That's not to say it's going to go away completely. Like I think it's going to take a long time for the user agent to be kind of not part of the web platform. But the user agent client hint is going to be a good area to focus on that side. And then I think the way I kind of I think about a lot of this stuff is that it's a slow process, but there's lots of change in between, right? That's going to happen, right? And so, like I said it quite a few times. Like my job is to help make developers kind of be able to kind of manage that transition properly. And I think when I was kind of mentioning before about this kind of idea about cookies or third-party cookies going away at some point, we have a number of issues where it's like I think identity is built on the back of third-party cookies. Identity and payments are fraud prevention, like all these different things where it's like they're real kind of use cases being solved, and they need to be kind of managed in an effective way. And so like we need to make sure those APIs exist on the web platform, and they work cross-browser, and all browsers consensus across all those browsers as well, to make sure that you can still deliver those experiences, but you can do it in a more privacy-preserving way than it is today at the moment. So it's kind of interesting. I think one of the things I would encourage people to look for as well, especially like there's two kind of APIs kind of coming through about conversion measurement. But also trust tokens is quite interesting. Like it's an API. Like the idea behind this API as well is like one of those use cases that kind of people use fingerprinting for is fraud detection. The idea behind that is it's supposed to help you with this kind of idea between distinguishing a bot from a human, because you can kind of get tokens from a known trusted source, and then you could use them and spend them on your site. Essentially, it's actually relatively complex, and I'm not doing it justice. So go and basically go and check it out. But it's an interesting way because like it might be one of those ways that we can get rid of capture right on the web. As well, because you can identify and a real person from a bot at that point. I think the other area as well, obviously that's the privacy side of things and security as well, mostly privacy. The other big focus that we had at Chrome Dev Summit was speed, right? Like day one was all about privacy and speed. Like if you were to look at the day one content, that's all it's about really. And so the reason why, excuse me, the reason why we chose that at that point as one of the really big drivers was people should focus on speed, because we know that, or people like the user developers should focus on speed, because we know that people prefer faster experiences, and faster experiences tend to have better outcomes for if it's a business, right, or a site or a content owner. You tend to get better outcomes when you've got faster experiences. And we know that across other platforms, not just the web, speed is a competitive feature, right? Like people say that iOS apps fast, right? Android app, maybe Android apps, but Android apps fast, right? Like on the web, slow, molasses, right? And so it's one of those things that we actually think is really important for people to focus on speed. And like, it's one of those things of the interesting area that we're in at the moment is there's things that we can now start to measure, right? A little bit more effectively and talk about and rationalize and reason about in relation to user experience, where we've never really had it before. We always used to talk about speed. Now we're talking about speed as a part of a user experience kind of piece. And so earlier this year, like we talked about Web Vitals. I think what was going to be Google I/O, but Google I/O got canceled and we moved it to Web.dev Live as well. But we introduced this kind of concept of like Web Vitals. And the idea behind it is like, there's some principles, features maybe around the loading experience that we can start to measure. We can tell you as a developer what they mean and how to measure them, how to understand it. And then you can actually kind of work out how your users experience your site holistically in the wild, right? And so it's one of those things of it's a lot of, well, obviously there's information that we're giving you as developers because there's things that you might need to change on your site. I'm not going to go into it too much either because I think there was a talk about it earlier on as well, but I'm not going into too much. But there's things that you can kind of improve in your site. At the same time, obviously, Google and Chrome are trying to work out how they keep improving the performance of Chrome and the web platform and new network information and stacks or image codecs, all these other things as well. But there's still fundamental things that you still need to do. Like there's limits of physics at the moment that we have, but we can't really make the web platform that much quicker. But you as a developer can. You can kind of do that way. And for me, Web Vitals is about understanding what that means and how to actually action it as well. And so Core Web Vitals is part of the overarching, sorry. Sorry about this. Oh my God. We have a heater in the room and it makes me sneeze. We have Core Web Vitals. And so Core Web Vitals is part of this kind of the wider Web Vitals kind of narrative. Like obviously search has got its own kind of perspective as well, which includes other user experience metrics like mobileness and a couple of other things. But Core Web Vitals for us is basically around 3 different metrics: largest contentful paint, first input delay, and cumulative layout stability, or layout shift, basically. And they're the first 3 metrics. I'm pretty sure there's going to be more metrics at some point in the future and maybe changes to these metrics a little bit as well as we learn more. But the idea behind this is like we can measure this in the wild and use that to work out kind of like holistically how people are seeing a site, right? And then obviously you can do that. You can get that data, put it into your RUM, and kind of deliver that back as well. But the idea behind this is like these are the at least 3 of the biggest things that we know that actually affect the experience that people have when loading. So things like cumulative layout stability, like the classic example is you're about to click a button and then the layout shifts, right? And you click the wrong button, like that type of thing as well. And so we can start to measure that. We can start to give you more information. You can start to address it and fix it. I think the biggest bit, and like this is one of the things that they talked about at Chrome Dev Summit, at least anyway, was, you know, things like first input delay. A lot of sites are actually doing pretty well, but like the hardest too is like largest contentful paint. Images still a really big issue on the web at the moment on that side, and then visual stability is actually still hard as well. And I think the bit for us here is like the actual combination of all 3. There's it says here 25% of sites, like this is from the HTTP archive basically, pass all the metrics. And so like there's a lot of work for us still to do in the ecosystem on that side. And I think it's kind of quite interesting. Like it depends on, you know, right now this is our perspective based off the metrics that we chose and the thresholds that we chose. You know, things might change in the future as well on that side. But I think the biggest piece here is like, I think it was last month, the search team announced that Vitals will be part of their overall ranking or measurement kind of parts of their ranking experience as well. We have no clue what that actually means physically, right? But it should kind of like hopefully incentivize people to kind of start to kind of think about performance improvements on that side as well. So I think that's actually pretty interesting. And I think the biggest thing for us is like, as we're talking to you as developers, like about kind of what to focus on and why it's important. Like the worst thing is like we tell you this and there's no tools, right? For you to be able to measure this and understand it and then action it, right? And so there's a lot of tools that Google has, maybe too many, right? And they measure slightly different things as well. And so like there's still some confusion in this space. And like one of the biggest issues that we see is like there's lab metrics and field metrics. And when we talk about it, people still don't quite understand what it is. But like this whole idea about like Lighthouse thinks about the lab, right? It's your local device. Maybe you can simulate things like network connections and throttling and device performance characteristics and a whole bunch of other stuff. but it doesn't really represent how your users feel and see you feel your site basically. And so we have this idea of field metrics, which is the Chrome UX report aggregates all this at Chrome at the Chrome level, but you can also do it inside your run as well if you have run. But the idea behind that is like that's actually the real perspective that your users have, right? Real users using your site. What is their overarching CLS, right? Like you can look at that and kind of see whether people are actually suffering at scale. And I think there's still a lot of confusion. Right? It's my job at the moment to try and work out how we can kind of get around that confusion as well. Yeah, I mean, there's not too much to say about this, but like when you're thinking about things like vitals, obviously you have to work out how to measure it, and you have to look at it yourself. Obviously, Chrome UX report can tell you kind of what is your site at the holistic level will experience, but there's certain thresholds, which means sometimes the data won't get reported on that side, and so you'd have to rely on another third-party library, or a third-party framework, a third-party run provider, sorry, on that side. I think the interesting bit is like analytics at the moment doesn't support it. Phil Walton on my team wrote the Web Vitals library, and then he's worked out how to hook that up into Google Analytics. So like if you do use Google Analytics, you can report it, and then you can have your own little dashboard on it as well. And I encourage you to kind of go and check it out as well, because it gives you a lot of information, especially if you're a Google Analytics user on that side, which is kind of pretty cool. I think the one thing I would say, and sorry, I keep coughing at the moment, where we're trying to get to with it as well is like, we do want to make sure that you as developers have all the information that you need right at hand and all the tools. And so web.dev/vitals is the place to go on that side. And my goal of 2021 is that we expand it even more, right? So like if you're struggling to understand how to improve your, the layout stability, we've got either the tools to help you fix it or identify the issue, or the guidance to actually help you physically solve it properly as well. And so definitely encourage you to go to that site and kind of keep it staying on that site as well to stay up to date as well, because things change over time as well. I think the one thing I would say, it's none of it is committed to as well, but like we aren't just looking at UX as speed. Like it's the first thing that we can start to measure, and we know how to measure properly. When I look at kind of other things, and I worked on PageSpeed Insights years ago as one example, and I would design some of the tests for PageSpeed Insights, and we were trying to look at like link tappability and clickability right on mobile devices. Like those are other things that materially impact the user experience. I don't know whether Vitals will go into encompass that, but like I think where we're trying to get to as a team is to talk about holistic user experience. Yes, speed is the first area that you can kind of go to and understand and look at, but like there's more after that kind of going through. And I know I'm way over time, and I've got one extra little section to go, and it's the bit I like the most. I'm going to power through it today, right? I think the biggest thing is like the other strand of Chrome Dev Summit was capabilities. Like the question is, why do you focus on capabilities? Like it looks like you're landing a whole bunch of crap on the web, right? Why on that side of things? And I don't know whether we completely answered that question, but we do want to excite people with what's possible on the web. We want more experiences to be able to come to the web versus go to other platforms. People and users should be able to experience a site or an app essentially without having to do a physical install. Like the web is very powerful for ephemeral experiences, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I think when I look at it, is like there are other platforms out there that are competing with the web on where the web's strong, and we're not always catching up. And so our capability story is that we want people to use the web more and use it for more things, right? That's our narrative on that side of things there. And I think it's pretty cool. Like Chrome's landed a whole bunch of APIs. I think if I was to ask any one of you, like, would you use Web USB or Web NFC? Probably 99% of you are going to say no as an example in that space. But the interesting thing here is like, we're doing this with a long-term view that more people are going to be able to come to the web. And so like, with things like Web Bluetooth as an example, like I can't say whether it would happen just yet, but like, because I don't think no one spoke to them, but like, imagine at some point Fitbit, you didn't need to use the app to go and set up your Fitbit device when you got it. You just went to a website and then connected your phone, or connected either your phone or your laptop, whatever it is, to the Fitbit device, boom, and all of a sudden it's all connected and set up, right? Like that's the bit that we want to try and get to. They're the types of experiences that we want to try and enable kind of coming through to the web as well. But we need a lot in that space. There's a lot of APIs that the web just doesn't have yet on that side of things, and you can always tell when an experience isn't kind of completely native as well. So still a lot of work to do. I think the bit that we talked about at the end, the closing keynote, was, and Alex alluded to this a lot, is like the attention around the app gap is kind of interesting, right? Because you tend to look at kind of how fast, like say a platform like iOS or Android can expand, because they own that single platform, right? And they can kind of just keep pushing away. And then you've got this kind of any platform, whether it's like, I don't know, Flutter or something, or the web, where it tries to kind of keep up, it's always behind, right? Like it's never quite there in terms of capabilities and richness and expressiveness, but it catches up over time, right? And so like people spend a lot of their attention there. I think the worry that we have, and like the worry that Chrome, like Alex had as well around this, was that there is a lot of pressure to not land capabilities in the web, right? And so our tactic, I suppose, to some extent, or maybe our strategy, is that like we do worry about, and this is the relevance gap essentially. The way I'm looking at it is like, you know, the emphasis I had with Alex, or Alex had, was that more people have come into the web, or more people come into computing than ever have done before. Like when we looked at it, like hundreds of millions of new users in India with new mobile devices, ever more capable hardware. It's kind of quite interesting. You know, meta platforms and other platforms, they're always kind of coming in. They're taking user attention away, right, from say the web at that point. People have never experienced the web with these new devices, but they want to be able to do stuff with their device. And so like we're in this really weird bit. Is like if the web doesn't push forwards, other platforms will, right? And meta platforms, which don't have to kind of worry about standardization and a whole bunch of other stuff, they'll just kind of keep driving ahead and like really landing new capabilities and features to the point where like we can't keep up, and maybe the web becomes irrelevant at some point in the future. I think that's a very far out view. I don't think that's the reality at that point. But the worry that we have is like we want to make sure that the web can keep up with those platforms. It doesn't have to do it straight away, but ultimately we want people to be able to kind of take the benefits of the web and then run with that, and then also kind of be able to kind of take those capabilities. But when I think about what those benefits are, and I'm not going to go too much into this, but like there's a model that the Chrome team's thought about this for a while now called Slice. So sites are secure, you know, everything's sandboxed, it's linkable. We know about links, right? We can go from experience to experience. Indexable, like we can understand what's in the page and be able to offer experiences either on top of that through extensions, or understand it through, you know, things like search. Composable, like the web is actually kind of pretty cool. And the fact that we can like jam JavaScript together and iframes and build experiences off the back of that. It's kind of amazing, right? But the biggest one is like this ephemerality, right? Like you don't have to install it. You can go to the experience, use it once, never have to see it again. Don't have to worry about it. It doesn't have to be present on your device. I think there's already like kind of really compelling benefits to the web. But when I was looking at this a while ago, like the worry about this is like, you know, everyone knows ephemerality is the biggest thing on the web. That is its benefit, well, one of its benefits, right? And every other single platform wants that ephemerality, right? And so I think the biggest thing for me, and when I think about that kind of like the relevance gap that Alex was talking about, is like if we don't kind of catch up with those other platforms, they'll kind of implement what we already have on the web platform and then kind of offer it in a better way to users. Like they'll solve user problems directly, right? And so I think it's kind of interesting. Like this article I wrote a while ago, it's kind of a little bit outdated now. Different platforms have changed and a whole bunch of other stuff, but the principle is still the same there. It's like ephemerality is the key to the web, and other platforms want it. And I look at it right now, it's like if I just pick 3 platforms, iOS, app clips, right? They want to make sure that you can either click on a link or scan a QR code, and you can start to use an experience without having to install it. And it's supposed to be seamless and delightful and everything. Really should just be the web browser, but that's, you know, whatever. They're pushing that because they know users, they want those lightweight experiences. You know, Android has had this thing for a long time now called instant apps. It's mostly used for games, but again, same type of thing. It's like you want to try an experience out, you tap it, you start to use it, and you know you're using it within, you know, maybe a couple of megabytes of download, and it's instant, right? At that point, kind of takes the benefits of the web. And then I look at things like Android slices, which I think they announced at I/O a couple of years ago, right? But like when I think about composability, like the web's got iframes. You can now integrate your kind of Android app into other parts of Android and other applications as well. And it's like, oh, damn, like these things are amazing, right? Like this is kind of what people want. They want that integration. They want that ephemerality. That's what the web's got. And I think that the bit there is like, I think we just have to be careful that the web is not taken over, I think, on that side. So I'm kind of getting close to the end on that side. I started that kind of part of the talk with Alex. It was just like, I look at the Chrome's mission from the Chrome comic as basically, you know, people are living their lives not just on web pages, but also in applications. We need to make sure that the platform is ready and suitable for them. And we have to do all of this in a way that is secure, fast, and speedy. Like Chrome's got these kind of 3 S's, or, you know, secure, speedy, and simplicity, I think it was. And like, so as we add features and capabilities to the web platform, we can't just add them in where, you know, like, you know, the web has changed to this point of like, privacy is fundamental across all of it. And we have to make sure that when we land a new API, or part of the web platform, it meets the expectations that users have with their own privacy on the web, right? And so there's a lot of stuff kind of going on in that space still. I think it's actually pretty interesting right now. But we've still got that same mission. If you read that comic, it's like it's still roughly the same. Like the goals are the same, the direction's the same still. I think it's kind of interesting. And so yeah, if I was to kind of wrap up a little bit, I suppose the one thing I'd say in terms of the capabilities is like, you know, I think we've said it before, like the Chrome OS experience, the Chrome apps is being replaced. And basically we need to make sure that those experiences can be implemented on the web. That's one of the reasons why we push the capabilities. Like if I look at kind of what we're also trying to do in that kind of capability space is make sure that you can improve the fidelity of experiences. It pains me a little bit sometimes that I look at Squoosh, which is an app that my team built, the image compression tool. It uses touch really well. It's got drag and drop. The interactions are amazing. It's too hard to build those experiences. And so it's like people don't build those experiences as much. And so it's one of those things that just like, I want to make sure that, you know, we can have high fidelity experiences, you know, with maybe some of the new primitives coming through, but it's easy to build. Like that's one of our big goals is like, you should be able to build a Squoosh level kind of like interactivity kind of app without having to put like months and months of effort in just to get like the, you know, the pinch zoom working, right? I know actually they didn't spend months doing pinch zoom, but they spent a while doing pinch zoom. You get what I mean? And our other goal is like PWA should feel integrated with the host platform, and there's still tons of work to do right now. It's like it's great that I can install my PWA on Chrome OS and I can install it on Mac and Windows and on Android and everything. But like you can kind of tell they're not supposed to be on the platform, and so there's still a lot of stuff that we're trying to do there. File handling, link capture, like there's a whole bunch of screen placement API. There's a whole bunch of things coming through, and one of our biggest focuses for 2021 as well is like it wasn't always just about capability that people were saying that, you know, why they won't deploy in the web. Like discovery and revenue, really big issues, right? And so if you want to make sure that you're going to be successful next year, you know, you have to make sure you build an app that goes into the Android store, the App Store, whatever. And at least for on the Android side of things, you can now build an experience that, you know, monetizes with the digital goods API in the Play Store, and you can also list your PWAs in the Play Store as well, which I think is nice. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why I had this slide actually. I was going to do a recap. I'm going to skip over it. You've heard me talk about safety, security, and speed, and wow, I got safe twice. I didn't mean safe. I meant capabilities and power on that side. I'm going to skip that slide. It's embarrassing. I'm sorry. I think the one thing I want to try is and kind of wrap up with is if there's areas that I think, you know, we as an industry and you should be focusing on next year, obviously focusing on improving user privacy. There's a lot of changes coming through the web platforms. We're all going to have to adapt on that side. The user experience obviously is a really big focus for everyone next year. We're starting with speed for sure, right, on that side, just because like the way I look at it is like it's the first time that a user experiences your brand or your experience. You want to make sure you kind of do a good impression on that side. I think maybe at some point in the future there'll be more things around our holistic understanding of user experience. Maybe we can measure it, in which case that maybe like vitals will expand. But if we can't measure it, then obviously it won't. But we don't know just yet. But like speed is the most important one right now, and it will be for 2021, all of 2021. And then obviously we want people to bring more richer experiences through the web as well. And so when I look at capabilities, I also look at the expressiveness of apps as well. And so kind of you're making sure that you're using and taking advantage of as much of the device as possible on that side. And I think the final piece as well is like, if we're not doing it right, like all the guidance should be on web.dev that we think is important on our side for developers, either from new APIs up to just general best practices and principles. If it's not, email me, like ping me, and we'll make sure that it tries to get there. And I think the one thing I would say is like lean on our team as much as you need to, right? And so obviously we're on Twitter, a lot of our team. But you know, we do need that feedback. We do need to listen to what you have as major issues and improve them, right? And improve on the platform, because if we don't listen, like the platform just doesn't get better, right, on that side. And that goes for all browser vendors, right? Like we're all in a safe space of we need to make sure that we're delivering for users, but delivering for developers as well at the same time. So obviously catch us on Twitter, see our book, email. Actually, my email's in the next slide, so I'll show you that in a minute. But yeah, you should be able to kind of engage with us and make sure that we're available for you. So that's it. that's like a behind the scenes look at the Chrome Dev Summit. I know I've gone way over. But yeah, I just wanted again to give you all a kind of overview about why we chose what to do at the event on that side. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. That was really exciting and informative. So yeah, if you're happy, I see one question in the chat, if you'd up to answer it.
Here we go.
So it was asked, do you see ZKP playing a larger role? I assume meaning zero knowledge proof?
I don't know. I don't know at the moment. I think when I look at things like trust tokens, they're supposed to be like it's a cryptographical method of like it is essentially identity management and proof of knowledge. I don't know whether it's zero knowledge proof or not on that side. I can try and speak to the team. Like, I think one of the things I would say is if you have any questions around this space, Rowan Meerwood on my team, I think his Twitter handle is Meerwood. He's probably the best person to speak to on that side because he manages all my privacy and security work on the team.
Awesome. Is there, I guess, a development in 2021 that you're most excited about or most looking forward to? Or is it kind of just everything that's changing?
I mean, there's a lot coming through, right? Like, I think this was the whole thing about Chrome Dev Summit, is that we focused on what we think is the most exciting set of things to kind of come through and change. And so, like, it's not as super exciting like privacy. It doesn't always seem super exciting, but it's important, right, on that side. I think there's like my personal space though is like I did a thing called Web Intense years ago, right? And so like being able to kind of like connect and bridge applications together has been a really important thing for me. And so I think things like share target API and like there's also file handlers and those type of things are allowing you to basically get deeper connection into the operating system. That's a really big thing on that side for me. And so like if it was like one thing I'm super excited about, I think it's some of those extra capabilities to bridge, like connect. The way I look at it is like you're trying to connect two web applications together. Right now, we just have links, right? Like you go from a link from A to B, and like we want to be able to kind of like link functionality together. So like share, edit an image, or like those types of things as well. And so there's a lot of that sort of stuff coming through on the web platform, which I think is actually really cool.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you for speaking to us.
Sorry, I went over. It was a little bit it went a little bit long.
I enjoyed it. All right.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining.
Right.
Okay, Casey. So it's time for us to do the raffle draw. So thanks everyone for joining us, and yes. So let me just double check everyone's entry. We don't want to miss anyone. And thanks for obviously for staying with us. Let me just copy over all the names that I see here. And as we said on our post here, we are gonna raffle out for Google Home Minis. And we're only going to award the prizes to people who are actually present. So let me just do this. Casey, if you want to, just maybe chat with people for a bit. Let me just refresh this.
Oh. Yeah, and thank you all for coming. We hope you enjoyed the talks. I definitely had a good time with them.
Okay, we're almost there. Right, okay. Okay. Right, so I think we're ready. So let me get back to the broadcast and I'll share my screen. Hang on a second. There you go. Right. Okay, so can you see my screen with the wheel of names?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Right, so as I said, there are 4 prizes we're going to give away tonight. So let's go on with the first one. Okay, so we have Brian. Oops, sorry. So, okay. So, congratulations. So we'll be in touch so we can get your address so we can send prize. Okay, the next one. Oh, yeah. Okay, so congratulations to Nicholas. Oh, sorry. Okay, third one. Okay, right. Congratulations to Will. And last but not least, okay, we seem to have two. Oh, it says Adrian. Great. All right. So congratulations to the four of you. As I said, we'll be in touch to send you the prize. Let me just stop sharing my screen. Great. So I guess that's it. Casey, do you want to wrap up? And
Yeah,
I in the background. Thanks again, Paul. For is there anything else you want to maybe say, Paul? Maybe we can add him back.
Well, no,
Last famous words.
actually, I really like that little wheel, like the wheel. It was kind of cool, actually. It's nice. No, I'm gonna say thank you, everyone. Like, I think the biggest bit I was gonna say is we live and die by feedback, right? With the team, right, and on Chrome, and so we're here to listen and help out as much as possible. And so, thank you for having me. So.
Thanks for being here. Okay, Casey, over to you to wrap up.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We really loved having you, and we hope you enjoyed the talks. They will be available on YouTube, so you can watch them again. You can watch the other track. So, yes, we hope you had a good time and come back to listen. So stay tuned for future events.
We'll have more. Thank you, Casey.
All right.